Eyes open? Good. Now, same question that I ask hundreds of times to the people that I deal with, either individually or en masse. And the only time that I have ever had people raise their hand, interestingly enough, we had nobody in the room, thank heavens, because, you know, if you raise your hand on that basis, there's no point in sitting through this lecture because basically it has nothing to do with you. You're far and above anything that I can teach you to do. But when I was in Indonesia a number of years ago, I've had a nice relationship with the Indonesian Tennis Association for 20, 25 years. It's been something that I've really enjoyed. Wonderful people, very talented players, and it's always a pleasure to work with them. When I first went down there, almost 23 years ago, they had me do lectures for coaches and then on-court sessions with the juniors. And it was quite nicely organized because the coaches and I met in the morning while the kids were in school, and then when the kids came out of school, we did the drilling on the court, and the coaches could change the theory that we're talking about into practical use out on the court. Well, I asked that same question to them. We had 75, 80 coaches in the room. Best coaches they had in the country. And very intelligent people and good former players. And I must get 30% of the people raising their hand. So, you know, after I say, okay, open your eyes and stuff like that, I say, well, let's take a break. I didn't know what to do. And so, and you have to understand something, though. Basically, I had an interpreter. I had a translator. And it always made me feel a little strange when I talk for, you know, maybe a minute, minute and a half, and then, and that's it. I always felt that there was something missing in the translation. So I went to the translator during the break and I said, what's going on? I've never had anybody tell me that they thought they had perfect timing and coordination. I don't want to insult anybody. I don't know if it's a religious thing or what it might be. So they looked at me and they said, oh, looked very sheepish. Because she said, oh, no, Mr. Bill. The problem was that I think I fudged a little bit on the translation. Because I said, how many of you think you have good timing, good coordination with what you're doing? Big difference between the two. We all have good timing, we all have talent, we all have good coordination. But I was talking about perfect timing and coordination. And that's important because when I work with people on the court, I want them to admit to that first off. If they don't understand that they have certain limitations and inadequacies in their physical talent and their mental capacities, we're in deep trouble because we're on different pages. But once a person realizes that, no, I don't have perfect timing and coordination. My timing and coordination will vary 15 to 20 to 25% on an hourly basis sometimes. You know, you wake up in the morning, your reflexes are different, and your timing is different than when you first go out there and you start hitting. You start hitting at the beginning of a match, totally different. Why do we take a warm-up? Start to get our rhythm and timing going. You get into the middle of a match and all of a sudden you're ready to win the first set and you're tight on a shot, your timing and coordination has varied again. So it runs the roller coaster as we're out there. And every athlete realizes this. You know, we don't have mile runners or 100-meter sprinters that run a world record every time or their best time. They vary anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20%. And these are disciplined, well-trained athletes. Well, this is an important part of what this lecture is all about and what our game is all about and our coaching. Because basically, we have what I call the human condition, the human paradox. And that is, on the one hand, physically, we do not have a perfect machine. As a matter of fact, in many instances, we would, if it were a car, we'd probably trade it in and put lemon on the top of it and tell the manufacturer that they really gave us a good hosing. But basically speaking, we don't have that physical timing and coordination. And yet, the problem is mentally, we're almost unlimited, or we are unlimited. Nobody has touched what our potential mentally is, what our capacities are. The use of the imagination, the computerization of being able to categorize things, solve problems, create solutions, and things like that. It's just phenomenal. So we're sort of stuck between a hard spot, a ship in a hard spot, because basically we've got almost perfection on one side that we don't even know how to explore. On the other side, we've got a very limited machine. And I think the problem that we have with most players is they're going out there as if they had a perfect machine. Their objective is to try to hit a perfect shot. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because basically it's a very difficult game. You've got pretty large racket heads, but you know, nothing super large. And you're hitting a moving ball that's moving at a different velocity every time. It's coming off the ground differently. It's got different spin, different speed. And all these things are happening, and we're moving. We're moving to the ball physically, and we're moving the racket. And now we're moving it even faster and faster and faster with the loading and the modern game and the pulling off the racket and stuff like that. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that that really requires a pretty good machine. And the problem that happens in most instances is what? We get overexposed on TV. And you see all the players doing this and, you know, jumping off the ground and doing all these wonderful things. The kids watch them. The adults watch them. But the kids particularly. And then we have the color commentators saying, oh, so-and-so is swinging as hard as they can, and they're hitting the ball as hard as they can, and they're aiming for the lines. And then they, in order to support that, they show a picture of somebody launching themselves into orbit when they hit the shot and the ball landing just inside the line. Wow, what a powerful mechanism. That's a conspiracy against every teaching pro in the country. Really.
That and the boom mics.
That's what, yeah, there we got the boom mics too. You're looking at the film, and you got boom mics placed strategically out on the court, so it sounds like the shots are coming out of guns, out of shotguns. I mean, I've never heard such loud blasts in my life. And then on top of that, the cameras are up here, so you never see that the ball is going more than 6 inches over the top of the net. And so you see the players going through the gyrations, you see them launching themselves into orbit, you hear the ball being hit, you see the picture, you hear the world's great commentators telling you how hard they're hitting it and so forth. Wow, lots of luck. You know, well, our job is tough enough to begin with. When you start to get that as a backdrop to it, it's awfully tough. So basically speaking, I think it's important to understand what we're confronted with. And that's the basic problem. We are not perfect. Now, don't read me wrong here. This is interesting because obviously, firmly, I believe this, and I think we're all on the same page with it. But here I'm saying, am I being presumptuous by saying, well, we're going to learn how to do a perfect practice? Yes, we are. We're going to learn how to do a perfect practice. Do you know why? Because one of the great attributes that humans have is the power of the imagination. The ability to assimilate things mentally and almost to the point of believing that they're doing it and understand the musculature is moving in that direction when they visualize it, if they do it well. So basically we have actual experience and we have synthetic experience. And that's an important thing to realize because I feel that most of the players who play do not practice perfectly because the only way they practice is in actual experience. Well, we all know that we're trying to reduce the unforced errors, we're trying to raise the level of consistency. So basically, if that's a goal, that's good. But we have imperfect machines. Varies from time to time. We're making the unforced errors. Well, how do we make it a perfect practice then? Well, either we hit the perfect shot and the ball goes accurately and consistently where we want it to go time after time, in which case we have created a mechanism that basically your nervous system responds to that, says it's good, we're fine, we're going to go ahead and we're going to try to do it again. Then the physical aspect of it sets in and we don't do it the next time. Goes into the net, goes long. Well, under those circumstances, we start to shift into synthetic experience. So basically, instead of going through the actual experience only, the most important practice of the practice that we go through is the synthetic experience. And we all know the studies. The studies, I think, are well known. The most popular is the basketball study where you take three groups, and they have 100 people in each group, A, B, and C. And Group A goes out there on the first day, and they shoot baskets for 15, 20 minutes. They shoot 20 foul shots after they're warmed up and they've gone through it. And they record what they did, how many they made during that session. And these are not picked athletes. This is a random group. Then you've got Group B goes out there, and basically they do the same thing, and Group C does the same thing, all the same type groups. Well, Group A then, for the next 20 days, goes out there and practices shooting foul shots for 20 minutes a day. Have a basket, sit there, go through it. No coaching or anything like that. Just shoot baskets. Group B does the same, and then they're tested at the end of that time. Okay. Group B does something different. They come to the facility every day, but they come to a room like this, have comfortable chairs, turn down the lights, relax, and visualize or picture or imagine shooting the baskets. 20 minutes a day, 19 days in a row. Okay? Then they're tested at the end of that period of time, and they have the results. Then Group C comes out the first day, shoots the baskets, doesn't do anything for the next 19 days. Nobody contacts them. Nobody gets a hold of them. They come back 20 days later, and they're tested. Well, the interesting results of it are that Group A, at the end of 19 days of practice on the court, has improved 23% as a group. Group B, who haven't shot a foul shot after that, but visualized it and imagined it in a reasonable amount of time for the 19 days, improved 22%. And Group C, of course, improved 0%. So what we're talking about, again, is the power of imagination and the use of that imagination. And we know it in negative sense because we also know about, sort of hypochondriacs and people that can force psychosomatic illness and things like that. That'd be the negative side of it. This is the positive side of it. So I think this type of a situation allows us, if we utilize it properly, to move toward a perfect practice.
And if you, since today's time's limited and we only have 2 hours in the classroom, if you have a lot of interest in that, the book is by Maxwell Maltz, M-A-L-T-Z, and all of his books out there have these studies in them, and the power of the mind and the subconscious mind and the self-hypnosis. And if you haven't read much about it and you're having trouble breaking through with some students, and as we go through the visualization and the ability to visualize, I think that book can be real interesting. If I ask you and I say, Ron, what kind of car do you have? What kind of car do you have? Everyone, what kind of car do you have? You think about it. What kind of car do you have, Ron? Mazda. What color's your car, Ron? Pardon me? What color's your car? Red. I'm sure that when I asked Ron what kind of car he had, and correct me if I'm wrong, the letters M-A-Z-D-A did not pop in his head, and R-E-D did not, but a picture of his car popped in his head, and then he described to me the picture he saw. And I think that's the same for everybody in the room. If I asked you, what's your mom look like? Well, your mom would pop in your head, well, she's got red hair, she's kind of short. If your mom's loud like my mom, you would have visualized how loud she can be. And this is how we think. We think in pictures. And I think that the synthetic experience, which goes along with the visualization versus the verbalization, a lot of our students miss balls and they run around the court and they yell, they're having a terrible day, my forehand stinks, hit the ball higher. And the truth of the matter is that's not how the mind works. That's not how the brain works. If the correction really needs to be made and you're really committed to making the correction, it's the visualization, not the verbalization. And I think over time we've seen some of the players that get mistaken as not caring. Whether it's Sampras, he's a very unemotional guy. I had a conversation with Paul Annacone for about an hour and a half one time, about a year and a half ago, and I asked him some of these questions. And this is what goes on in Pete's mind on the court. In fact, he sees pictures so much and so often, and he worries about so many different things, but it's all in pictures, and they're flying through his head like a movie. And I think I've never heard it, but I'll bet you this is what goes through Federer's mind also, the guys who don't exactly show all of the emotion as people say. They're too busy focused on the visualization versus the verbalizing, and I think they are so good at it, and I think they see the picture so clearly, and they've developed the skills so far, they can then take themselves and have a kinesthetic awareness that they can execute the pictures that they've seen in their head. And if you can try that sometimes with the students, I think you'll find that if you ask them to visualize it, almost as if there's the VCR in the head. They missed the shot, we hit the rewind button, visualize the rewind button, hit the play again in their head, see the picture of what you're trying to do. I think it was Jack Nicklaus that said he'd stand over a putt. We've got some golfers. Before Jack Nicklaus ever hit a putt, he saw the ball roll in on the line. He wanted to see it roll in 5 times. Al Order, great discus thrower, I think set a record for how many times he was in the Olympics. He used to visualize his discus throwing, and when I was young, I didn't understand. What's he visualizing? You grab a discus, you step up, you spin in a circle, you throw it. But visualizing, he was visualizing long before there was anybody being recognized as a sports psychologist. The high jumpers, the divers, you'll see the divers on the side, their eyes are closed, their body's moving, they're waving, they're visualizing. And don't underestimate the power of visualization, and I think we are overestimating the power of verbalization. I don't think the verbalization will get it done, but I think the visualization will get it done for you. Yes, Ed?
So you're saying the people who verbalize in the middle of a match aren't going to be performing as well as people who visualize during the match.
I'm saying if you want to solve a problem, if you want to make a correction, you hit your forehand in the net. And instead of yelling out, I'm hitting my forehand in the net, or hit it higher, are you stupid? I think it works better if you will visualize yourself hitting the forehand 3 feet over the net, 4 or 5 times as you walk to the back fence and as you go to your strings, instead of saying, come on, man, you got to hit the forehand higher. I think you'll get farther seeing in your head your forehand going over the net and visualizing that happening in your mind.
Have you ever had a kid say, I don't know how to visualize?
Absolutely. I have had many kids, and I'll tell you my own experience. Bill gave me the handout, and I'll be happy to email it out to you all, Winning a Mental Habit, and it's got instructions for visualization. The first time I visualized, not only could I not sit still in a relaxed state, but I kept losing. I was losing point after point. You talk about a problem with your self-esteem. In my own mind, I'd play points, and I'm losing. I'm missing into the net in my own mind. This isn't real. There's no ball going on. This is just me laying there in a relaxed state visualizing. And I think that if you need assistance in that, most kids do not know how to visualize. Most kids do not know how to attain a relaxed state so that they're able to enter, what we'll call the subconscious mind. And I think the problem is some years ago, we'd have on TV the hypnosis, and they gave a bad name to self-hypnosis. I mean, you can't make somebody bark like a dog and dance around like an idiot or take their clothes off and run around. You don't lose control of yourself. What you do is get into a relaxed state, and you're able to enter more of the subconscious and get to a place where you can really make a difference. I'll visualize my playing. Before I came out here, I was visualizing getting ready to come out here, and I know it's going to be hot. I'm soaking wet, sweating when I get done. My body didn't know the difference between the actual experience and my ability to visualize it. But for 20 years, I've been practicing the visualization. And I think most kids do not know how. And the adults, I do it with the ladies also. I've got ladies who can't make a second serve. We do some visualization. They're scared to death. Yes?
One of the things that Boris Becker used to do, and I've seen this on TV, is actually when he would be in a match, he would miss a shot during the points. He would ask one of the ball girls to give him a ball.
And redo it.
They literally redo the shot
Absolutely.
in between points.
Absolutely.
So
Same concept. It'll work better than just talking about it 7 days a week and twice on Sunday.
When I'm working with my students and we're talking about the most important habit is to solve the problem. Solving the problem takes tremendous, very deep levels of concentration. And that's really what we're talking about. If we get rid of all the metaphysical words and things like that, what we're really talking about is concentration. And when I talk with my students, basically what I'm saying, I don't want to patronize you, but basically what I'm going to do is spend most of my time teaching you how to concentrate. Because the greatest power that you have is the power of visualization and using your imagination. And the problem is right now you're misusing it. It's going in the opposite direction. Sort of like power. Power is great, but if you misuse it, it's going to work against you. Well, the same thing with the visualization or the power of concentration. If I don't direct it appropriately, I get the wrong. Same computer business. Garbage in, garbage out. So as a result, I need to teach my students how to concentrate. And that means that then they're going to be able to logically use their deductive reasoning. The problem with emotional trauma when they get out there on the court and loss of esteem and even fatigue is that you lose your power of deductive reasoning. You lose your power of concentration. So basically when we're talking about words, when we talk about self-talk or you're talking about words in terms of what you need to do, I start off from a verbalization standpoint in teaching my students how to actually concentrate and use their power of imagination. And I use a 4P concept. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this. I use the 4 Ps. When students are out there playing and they miss shots, the worst thing that you can hear is obscenities being yelled out at the top of their lungs, the racket being thrown on the ground, and total chaos. Now, is that bad? Not totally. Not totally. Because basically it releases the pressure. But it is relatively unproductive, non-productive, because it doesn't correct the problem. All it does is release the pressure. And that's fine, but I want to be a little bit more effective and I want to be able to win the match. So I not only want to release the pressure, I want to go on and win the next point, or at least not make the same mistake the next time. So I work with the 4 Ps with my students and I teach them how to talk to themselves. Because when you're talking with themselves, most people don't speak the right language. And the right language would be, first of all, I use the first person. That's the first P. I don't say, oh, you stupid idiot, you moron. I'm not talking to somebody else, I'm talking to myself. So I put it in the first person, I. I am doing this, I did this. Secondly, I must keep it positive, okay? I'm not going to use a negative. Don't hit the ball in the net, you jerk, is the most unproductive, contradictory thing a student could say to themselves. Because basically, the mind is only going to latch on to the positive. See? But with the negative in there, you're saying, don't hit the ball in the net. It's going to hit the ball in the net. Hit the ball in the net is what you just said to yourself. So basically, I need to keep it in positive terms. Instead of don't hit the ball in the net, I have to translate that into aim it over the net. I mean, that's a simple translation, but people don't speak this way. They don't have that as a reflex habit when they miss shots. Third, I'm going to keep it in the present tense. I'm not going to talk in the future. I'm not going to talk in the past. I'm going to talk in the present tense. And I can use present progressive. I am aiming the ball over the net. As opposed to, oh, you stupid moron, you can't play this game. Don't hit the ball in the net. You've just totally destroyed the use of the most valuable technological advanced thing on the face of the earth, sitting on top of the people's head. This is the most unbelievable VCR and computer on the face of the earth, because it can also reason deductively and solve problems. And it can do it in lightning fast stages the way we can with high-speed internet or high-speed computers or anything like that. But the problem is most people never plug the thing in. They never plug it in, so it doesn't work. And those who plug it in, probably only 10% of the people know how to use it or know how to program it. So as a result, it's not working for them, it's working against them. So I'm going to make my corrections in first person, positive and present tense, and it must be precise. It cannot be imprecise. No, you know old Murphy's Law, whatever can be misunderstood will be misunderstood. So when my students are making errors, I do want them to talk to themselves, because that's the way they learn in school and everything else. The verbalization comes from the teacher, the feedback comes from them. So I'm going to teach them how to translate their commands or their suggestions in a language that will allow them to be effective with it. So we've now changed the, I can't hit a ball in the net, I can't play, to I am aiming the ball 3 feet over the net. I am aiming the ball 3 feet over the net. I'm in the first person, I'm positive, I'm in the present tense, and the height over the net was precise. It cannot be misunderstood. Now, when I do that and I verbalize that, words actually marvelously produce what? Pictures, as Bruce said. Words produce the pictures. And the pictures actually subsequently produce something else. They produce emotions. And the emotions are what we act on. The emotions are the powerful motivator. Nobody has ever changed a habit. Nobody has ever superseded a habit through logic. Logic does not change the world. Emotion changes the world. People buy expensive cars on emotion and then justify it with logic. Oh, I'm going to get 24 miles an hour, a gallon instead of 22. You know, but that's the system. And advertisers understand that and they realize that. So the first stage of visualizing to me is to verbalize. I must know how to talk to myself in order to get the best job out of it. And you know why this is so important? Because this makes the student accountable for their mistakes. And it also does one other thing which I think is critically important that I constantly work with my students on, and that is make all the mistakes you want. I've made more mistakes in 1 week than you will in a lifetime. But I try not to make the same mistake twice, because that's stupid. That doesn't show that you have the potential mentally that you have. Don't make the same mistakes twice. And a lot of times when I go through situations